Welcome to the Trusted Visions weekly podcast. We hope that everybody's having a good week, and we wanted to continue the series for the month of January and end this topic of making a broker dealer change and considerations to think about. We've covered a variety of different topics throughout the month, and this one is probably one of the most delicate topics, as well as most important topics. We are without our beloved David Perez in that he is sick today. So Deb and I are going to run the helm here. But the topic today is you've made your broker dealer decision on what broker dealer you're going to go to and how to go about negotiating your transition package. And the reason I say it's a delicate topic is as an advisor, you obviously want the best possible deal out there. What you don't want is to offend the broker dealer or come off greedy from the perspective of this is going to be a long-term broker dealer partnership. And so getting off on the right foot and making sure you can create a win-win situation for your broker dealer partner as well as you as the advisor or your OSJ group is vital. I always strongly suggest, and I hope this doesn't come off bias, this is probably one of the most vital areas that I strongly encourage you to work with a consulting firm like Trusted Visions, because it allows you to think outside the box or allows them to think outside the box and really bounce ideas off of one another to make sure that you get the best possible deal. And I'll give you an example of that. We've worked with several groups throughout 2020. And what we found with one particular group is payouts and pricing were extremely important to them. And they didn't want as much money up front, and that wasn't as important to them. So we really had to bounce ideas back and forth. And even we as Trusted Visions consultants are able to go back to the broker dealer and negotiate on your behalf. I'm not saying we come off as the bad cop, but allow us to do that work, having spent decades in the shoes of those corporate recruiters, because we know what levers can be pulled. And so one thing to understand with negotiating your transition package is, and Deb, if you have anything to input, I'll let you chime in afterwards, is I see it in my career as three different levers you can pull. Now, when one of those levers go up, the other one has to go down. And those three levers are payouts, pricing, and what I mean by pricing is the admin fees on advisory accounts. Annual fees are pretty set for the most part. You can negotiate ticket charges to some degree, but that becomes a technical difficulty going forward. And then upfront money. And so first of all, you have to figure out as a financial advisor, as a group, what's important to you as it pertains to your long-term vision. We work with some groups that say, I want the most amount of money up front. I don't care about the rest. The trouble you get in with that is this is your one time to negotiate. And so if you foresee yourself in growth mode, do you really want to give up that payout of 2, 3, 4 points for the most amount of money up front, where that's going to go away over a short period of time? And so, what I say is, from a broker dealer standpoint, one thing that can really get you in trouble is broker dealer executives typically don't like a lot of back and forth between the negotiating side. Now, you can say what you want to get. The broker dealer's perspective is they want to get you and get you to affiliate for as little as possible, and there's a middle ground there. But I always suggest, and I would love your input, Deb, of I don't think you ever want to go back and forth with the broker dealer more than 2 or 3 times at most, because I've seen it throughout my career where some broker dealers will just say, we're done, I'm pulling the deal off the table. The other thing that can benefit you is if you've made your decision with a broker dealer of this is where I'm going, and during the negotiating, don't go into it with the first conversation, but when you're negotiating and trying to get a little more, is to go to them and say, if I can get X, I will commit at this point to affiliating with your broker dealer on this date. That carries a lot of weight, because then the broker dealer can say, okay, we may be over to sharpen the pencil a little bit to get there, but now that we know that we'll have the commitment, then we're good. One thing to keep an eye out on that and be cautious of is if you go down that path and say, if you get me this, I'll commit to joining on this date. There's no more negotiating if they come and get you that. So that will get you in harm's way because, again, that's not a way that you want to start off the partnership. So Deb, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. Any input on what I said, and then any other advice that you'd give to these OSJs and advisors?
Well, Jeremy, you hit it right on the head. Everything you said, I completely agree with. And you do the art of negotiation. You do a fantastic job. So I really couldn't do it any better or add a whole lot more to it. I think the key points that you hit on just real briefly is, number one, making it a win-win. Always go in with the mindset of making it a win-win for both parties, right? For the broker dealer and the advisor. I think you have to have that. And looking at the different levers, again, I won't reiterate it because that just takes up time. I agree with everything that you said, and how to go about it and being fair, and exactly the going back and forth on too many times with firms and BDs. What they're going to see that as, right, is that you're just kind of playing them against a different firm, right? You're just kind of going back and forth, and you're saying, okay, well, here I am, I'll offer you this. And then you go back and you might be putting them up against another firm, and they will get tired of that, right? I mean, they want to see this as a partnership.
Agreed.
They want to see this as a partnership between you and them, which means a win-win, and that you're looking at all things and you're wanting to make sure that they're profitable as well as you get the best deal. So I think that's, again, everything you said is spot on.
And the other couple things I would add is, number one, it's very important, and again, not to go back down this path of working with a firm like Trusted Visions, it's very important when you're negotiating that deal, as you put it, one of our podcasts, Deb, is the devil's in the details. The upfront money, the payouts, the pricing are important, but what does that payout look like over a period of time? Is that locked in for that 5 or 7 year note? Is it not locked in? Can it change? How often has the broker dealer changed pricing over the last 5 years? Have they added fees? Have they, increased fees? Looking at that stuff is really important, because you may feel like you got the best possible deal, but if you're going to a firm that has historically increased fees every year over the last 5 years, it's likely you're going to have more fees there that are added on and you're not thinking through it. Or on the transition notes, some broker dealers charge interest on that forgivable note, some don't. And so reading that fine print and really understanding what you're getting into on the forefront, because like I said, once you sign that transition note and become effective, you have no more negotiating power, because that's what you've agreed to. So that would be my first point as it pertains to negotiating with the broker dealer. The second point I would say, back to last week's podcast, is before you negotiate, if at all possible, try and get face to face with those executives that are making those decisions. Because what I've found throughout my career is it's so much easier when they believe in you and they have seen you and understand you and understand your personality, and you're going into this with the right mindset, versus trying to do it all over the phone. Now, that can't always be the case. But I do think that's extremely important as well. So with that, I want to move on to the next topic, which is kind of a subtopic is this. And Deb, you and I come across these advisors every day that say a transition is an enormous amount of work to make the transition, and I don't know when I'm going to make the move. And so discussing the importance of setting a transition date. And when I say it's important to set a transition date, it keeps you accountable of understanding that transition date can be moved one way or the other slightly. But what it does is it prepares you to be held accountable of, I got to get this stuff done in that amount of time. Secondly, and just as importantly, it gives the broker dealers transition teams and operation teams and compliance teams a good idea of what's coming in, so that they can make sure they provide as much capital resources to having a successful transition. The last thing I would say to that is, as an advisor or an OSJ, it's really important to sit down with your staff. And, because not taking anything away from the financial advisor, what we found throughout our careers is most of the time the administrative staff, the office manager, the acting principal are doing the majority of the heavy lifting with the transition paperwork and all of that. And so sitting down with them and making sure that, hey, I'm thinking this is a realistic target date. What are your thoughts? And getting buy-in, because if you don't get buy-in from them, you're going to get some pushback. So anything to add, Deb?
Now, again, you said everything, correctly, right? So most broker dealers are going to have a transition timeline, right? When you start talking about that transition date, right, Jeremy? So, and standard is going to look probably 60 to 90 days with most, probably 90 days is going to be your typical transition timeline that the most firms will come to you with. But again, that can be moved up or down. I always tell advisors, look, transitions can be done as quickly as you want or can take as long as you want, right? I mean, it really can go in your speed. And when you're talking transition, you want to make sure that you're doing it in your time frame. And a lot of that has to do with, again, Jeremy, like you said, how many staff do they have? How many accounts do they have? Are things in brokerage accounts? Are they non-brokerage? So all those pieces that talking through the staff and with the transition team of the broker dealer, you're going to be able to come up with a plan really that says, what is that between, how can I manage my expectations on this time frame for a transition? And that's a key thing. Managing your expectations on the transition and the timeline, as well as the people in your office, because I think that's where a lot of advisors and their teams run into issues. My personal experience with working with the advisors is when expectations aren't managed. And part of that, quite frankly, falls on the part of the BD, right? Managing the expectations, because they have the experience in working with these teams and knowing what the workflow is going to look like and what that, as far as how many accounts they have, right? I mean, if they've got fewer accounts, managing it may only take this amount of time, and it's this amount of work to, if they have 1,000 accounts, it may take a little bit longer, right, Jeremy? We've all been through that. So I think that's just kind of the things to look for and think about when you go into that piece of the negotiation and the transition is keeping an open mind and just knowing that you've got to be prepared for it, just like you said. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nails on the head.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, broker dealers can work with whatever time frame, whether that's a short time frame. And my advice when you have a short time frame, given the circumstances, is, hey, the broker dealer can get through that. What you got to understand is it's going to be a little more bumpy, and there's going to be more hiccups that come through it than a typical transition. When you have a scenario with a wirehouse advisor that's coming independent, like you had said, 60 to 90 days, that time frame should be longer, because you really have to figure out branding yourself. You have to figure out real estate and lease negotiations, and working with a firm like Trusted Visions that can really help you navigate through that path and ensure that you're setting those realistic expectations.
Right.
I would say if a broker dealer is trying to push you faster than you're ready to go, you have to take a step back and ask yourself, what are their intentions? Now, their intentions could be good in that they want to, make this as seamless as possible for you. But in many cases, if they're really trying to push you and your staff faster than you're ready to go, that would make me nervous. So the importance of setting a transition date is to hold not only yourself accountable, but also the broker dealer accountable to ensure that they have the capital resources or human resources available and ready for that transition process. Anything you want to add on to that, Deb?
Nope. No, that's perfect.
Well, that closes out the month of January's topic of making a broker dealer change and considerations to make. Any feedback any of you have, we would greatly appreciate it, and like to hear what everybody thinks. Next week, we will start the next monthly topic, which is building a recruiting enterprise or OSJ, which will be a fun topic throughout the month of February. With that being said, hope everybody has a good week, and thank you for listening to the Trusted Visions podcast.